Hey, good morning, Mary.
Well, good morning. Thank you. Thank you. Hello. Thanks everyone for attending today's webinar. We're very happy to have you join us today. And here at the United Way of Hastings, we've been in our community for over 55 years, helping those community members in need. Every dollar we raise here stays right here in our community. And as you can see from our graphic on your screen, we run internal programs, we help fund other nonprofits in our community that are providing direct services locally, and we collaborate with a wide range of other groups in our city. 4 times a year, we host the Helping Kids Succeed Community Partners meetings, where local leaders from education, government, business, the health community, faith community, all come together and we discuss the needs in our area. Our discussions about mental health needs led directly to these webinars. So we use every dollar as efficiently as possible. Our webinars this week are free. If you find them of value, please consider making a donation this week to help keep the good going. This morning, we are delighted to have on our webinar Representative Angie Craig. She is a member of Congress who represents us right here in Hastings, Minnesota. Representative Craig and her staff members have been regular attendees of our Helping Kids Succeed Community Partners meetings. She wanted a minute to just say hello and to tell us what's happening with mental health at the federal level. Representative Craig.
Mary, thank you so much. And Jane, it's such a pleasure to be here back with you today to talk with all of you for this really important webinar, and of course, everything that the Hastings United Way does. I have the privilege of representing such a beautiful congressional district, and I know that this is one of the most important priorities for this area of the district. You know, before I start, I just want to say that what Jane said a moment ago means so much to me, and that is working together across the country to destigmatize mental health issues in our country. I worked for more than 20 years in the cardiovascular sector, St. Jude Medical, and we have to start referring to and thinking about depression and mental health as a disease state that we treat just like when I worked in cardiovascular care. This work was important to all of our communities even before the pandemic hit, but I know that it's such a difficult time for so many folks who've been isolated for so long. For young people across this country, I have a senior in high school myself at Rosemount High School, and it's just been such an isolating time. The COVID-19 public health emergency, while it's taken a toll on so many, I hope that from a federal level, we can begin to open up new opportunities in remote and virtual healthcare when it comes to rural America, making sure that everyone has access to good mental health care across this country. Fortunately, my colleagues in the House and I have been fighting to enact legislation that would do just this, that would give the American family more opportunities to seek access to health care and to make sure that this disease state, the stigma is ended. You know, this has hit my colleagues and I on a very deeply personal level as well. Tommy Raskin, my colleague from Maryland, his son succumbed to depression, and that's the way that we have rallied around Tommy and his family, and we've made a commitment that we're going to do everything in our power to enact legislation to help families get the help that you need, and to make sure that our educators and our healthcare community have access to what they need as well. So while we've been working to appropriate money to expand mental health services for students and young people, the best practices for behavioral intervention in schools is also an incredibly important need. We've crafted legislation to ensure equity in mental health and undertaken really bipartisan efforts to provide health services for those suffering from substance abuse. So my staff this week, Jane and Mary, will be continuing to join you to learn more, to hear from folks, and make sure that I've got all the information to take back for myself, for our district, but also for my colleagues in the Congress, where this is just a huge priority. So again, thank you for letting me join you this morning. Thank you for everything that you do for our community. And you have my absolute commitment that your representative in Minnesota too will make mental health a critical issue in the U.S. Congress. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Craig. We so appreciate it. We know that this is close to your heart, and we thank you for joining us today. So now I'd like to turn it back to Jane, who will get started with today's webinar.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Representative Craig. We appreciate you being here and your staff members as well. You've been very supportive of the work that is going on in the local community, so that's great. Good to have you here, all of you. We are expecting, we have some folks registered for the webinar from the Philippines, and so we're hoping that they're going to be able to join us. It's the middle of the night for them, but they're from Danadagas University in General Santos City, South Cotabato, Philippines. And they are psychology students in college and very interested in the webinars. And so we're hoping that they're going to be, I have things set up. I'm hoping that the technical side of things will work out okay. So they may be coming in as well. So let's get started. I want to introduce two colleagues to you who will be part of today's presentation. I was going to say helping, not helping, doing the presentation. The first is Brady Erlinson. Brady is a senior at Hastings High School and also taking classes at Inver Hills Community College, getting ready for college this fall. He has been a member of the United Way Yes team, which I'll explain more about in a few minutes. He's been on the team for 3 years and has done an outstanding job. He is a co-team lead this year with one of our other Yes team members. And this fall, he'll be entering the University of Minnesota to study genetics, cell biology and development, and hopes one day to be a genetic counselor, which is fantastic. And I think going to be quite a growth industry in the years ahead. Just an explosion of research going on in that area. Brady has been a YMCA camp counselor and really believes in empowering the youth in Hastings. And we've seen that demonstrated throughout the last several years. His free time, he enjoys spending time with friends and collecting vinyl records. He added that in his bio, so I'm gonna wanna know which vinyl you like. We'll have to have a good conversation about that. My other colleague is Charlie Black. Charlie is a well-respected counselor at Hastings Middle School, also a lifelong resident of Hastings, and has been at the middle school as a counselor since 2004. He is proud to be giving back to his community, and he says it has been very supportive of him, both as a young person and as an adult. Charlie has coached youth sports since he was in high school and sees it as a valuable way to enhance youth character development. He enjoys camping and spending time outdoors with his family. And Charlie has been on the United Way of Hastings Board of Directors since 2016. Thank you both for joining us on the webinar. I do also want to have a little side note. Charlie, I think, would be the first to say what a positive experience it's been to be on a board of directors. And United Way, like other nonprofits, has a board. And so we always encourage people, if you'd like to explore becoming a board member, check out our website, or any nonprofit organization. Consider becoming a board member with those as well. So today we really want to talk about helping kids succeed, which is our initiative here in Hastings to help young people grow and develop healthy webs of support. So I've got a slide or two here, a couple of slides. We just want to give you a little bit of context for what we're going to be talking about today. And I put together a timeline just as a way, there's a lot of information on here, but just as a way of helping you get some context to what Brady is going to be talking about. Our initiative has been going since 2012 here in Hastings. And that year, many of you would remember, we did have a series of teen tragedies, which really shook the community. And parents got together, community members, and long story short, they formed the Helping Kids Succeed initiative, and United Way became the point organization for that. It was a broad coalition, though, of partners. We had faith community members, business community members. Certainly the education community was very strongly supporting. The city was very strongly supporting what we were doing. And also at the time, we started the YES team. And YES stands for Youth, Empowerment, and Support. And every year since 2012, we have had a team of high school students who have been YES team members. We work with the high school to find the high school staff to find what we call emerging leaders, young people that have a lot of leadership potential, although they might not recognize it yet. And we invite them to a presentation. We tell them about our expectations. And we typically have a group of about 50 students who are interested. And out of that, we get 5 to 10 new team members. Of course, with COVID in 2020, things were a little different. And so we have had the same team members who've just been valiantly carrying on for the last year, and we're looking to add more. So if you know a young person who might be interested, please let us know who that would be. And so out of that, we had a whole series of meetings throughout the community, and we gathered data, we gathered inputs around what was already working to help kids develop, again, what we call a healthy web of support. And out of all of those meetings and all of that work, we published a handbook called the Helping Kids Succeed Handbook. We do have copies still available, so if you'd like one, I'll explain later on how to get one. Certainly you can drop by our office and get one. But it not only explains the model, it's full of 900 ways on how to build a web of support that Brady is going to talk about. We had the opportunity a few years ago working with then Principal Mark Zuzik at the middle school and Charlie, and now Steve Kovach, the current principal at the middle school, to be able to reach as many of the middle school students as possible. And so we've been able to train 8th, 7th, and 6th graders in the model. And then 2 years ago, we had an opportunity to start working in the high school. And so doing that, we did some surveys. And interestingly, we found, and it's very consistent here in our community with other communities, anywhere from 15 to 20% of our students report very few anchors in their lives. And Brady will talk a little bit about that. And that becomes a concern. We were surprised to see that there was so much retention of information year to year, which was great. And we also did the last survey that we did, we found that over 50% of the 8th graders that we surveyed, or the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, wanted to spend more time with their anchors. And that's not something we always think of. So that's interesting. That's good food for thought for all of you. So that just gives you a little bit of context to where we are. What I want to do now is turn it over to Brady. He is going to be giving us a presentation about what the Helping Kids Succeed model is. And this, again, is something that we train all of our YES team members to do. Brady just happens to be an outstanding presenter, which is great to see his work. So Brady, I'm going to hand it to you, and you can take the ball and run with it.
All right, so like Jane said, I'm a member of the YES team, and one of my jobs of this team is to teach the Helping Kids Succeed model, which is what I'm going to do right now. So in the left-hand corner of this slide, you'll see what is a sun. And when the sun shines light, we get the visible light spectrum. So you've probably heard the phrase Roy G. Biv, and each one represents a color. And we use each color in the visible light spectrum as the backbone of our model, really. So each color represents something in our model. So red, for example, represents the rule of 5. And what that is we recommend 5 anchors. That is the minimum amount that someone should have. And now you're probably wondering, what is an anchor? Anchors are people who care for the well-being of a young person and expect more from them than they do themselves. So I like to think of it as kind of like a mentor. And these can be people who are parents, aunts and uncles, grandparents, teachers, coaches, anybody in the community really who has the best interest for the young person in mind and is willing to support them.
Brady, let me give Charlie an opportunity here just to jump in, because he is on the front line of working with our students. And Charlie has also presented the model and is very familiar with it. Charlie, what are you noticing at the middle school in terms of anchoring relationships that students might have or be in need of?
Yeah, with quarantine, everybody is aware, just kids have lost access to their anchors. There a lot of kids have coaches that they really connect with, family members. A lot of the anchors, even though I know a lot of anchors are reaching out to kids and trying to connect, it's just really become difficult. So it is really nice for kids to be back in school. I think of, kids kind of identifying adults as anchors, but then even just having adults that expect a lot out of them that kids might not consider their anchors, but these teachers are doing a lot. So yeah, just seeing kids that have lost access to these adults has been really hard.
Mhm.
Yeah, that brings up a really good point with this pandemic. It has really impacted everybody's webs of support because it has removed a lot of anchors from students' lives by not going to schools much, and they're not seeing their teachers as much and other community members that may be their anchors. So this is really important information in this time, I think.
Yeah.
And then the next color we have is orange, and orange represents tangible strings. So there's two types of strings that anchors cast across the model. And then once I explain a little bit more, I'll start drawing the model so it makes more sense. But if you know what tangible means, that means they're physical things, and strings are things that anchors provide to the young person. So I have some examples here, like food and clothing, but there's a lot more examples in this book here. There's like pages full of examples. So stop by and get your book at the office. Other examples could be like shelter, and there's so many.
I'll read off a couple just before you flip to yellow. Some of the other strings that an adult would cast would be boundaries and consequences, feeling safe at school, helping to develop people skills, neighbors who know youth and adults work together, adults hold high expectations. These are, I think, two interesting ones, ease of reading and ease of math. Sometimes I was good on the reading side, not so much the math. And having an anchor that really supports and encourages you not to give up, I think is part of helping with that. Things to do, faith community meetings or services, youth engagement, and helping others. So tangible are things that we could measure. If we did a survey of students, it would be relatively easy for us to assess whether that student has that string in their life and where it would be coming from. That's good. I love you typing in there. I love that.
Yeah.
We're experimenting with some new tools here, so this is cool.
So just like I said, we have multiple different types of strings. So we have physical things that are measurable, but we also have intangible strings, which are harder to measure. And we like to think of those as values or virtues that the anchors model for the young person. So I have some examples like integrity and self-respect. So as you can see here, these are things that the anchor does that the young person kind of like picks up on. So yeah.
We sometimes think of these as character qualities. Again, kind of looking at our list here in the handbook, other strings would include achievement, open-mindedness, vision, curiosity, I love that one, compassion, empathy, laughter. Can you laugh at yourself? Can you kind of make light when tough things happen? Justice, gratitude, self-respect, patience, persistence, and another one I love, which is courage. These are a little harder to measure. That's why we call them intangible, but we know that they're really important for living a full and healthy life.
Yeah, so they're all very important and they're hard to measure, but equally as important as tangible strings. And then we get into the next part of our model, which is green, and that represents growing the balloon. And the balloon in our model represents the young person. And just like how balloons come in different colors and different sizes, kids have different skills and talents that need to be nurtured and recognized. So I'm going to start drawing the model. Excuse my poor artwork skills on here, but each dot is going to represent an anchor of the model. So as you can see, we have 5 anchors, and what the anchors do is they cast strings. So the red will be the tangible ones. They cast strings between the anchors like this. and then we'll add the intangible strings. And as you will see, the more strings, the stronger the web looks. And then the balloon sits on the middle of the web. So as you can see here, the thicker the web is, the more anchors, the more strings there are, the more likely the balloon is gonna stay above the web and not fall through the cracks. So it's very important to have more strings, more anchors so that the balloon can stay upright.
Brady, do you want to talk for a minute when we do the presentation in person, how this looks when we've got a group of students or adults in the room?
Yeah, it's much more fun when we do it in person because we take usually just like people from the crowd or like other team members, and we have 5 people stand equidistant from each other, and we take a ball of yarn and we start passing it between each other, and it creates the web, and then we put a balloon right on the top. We put a balloon right on the top so it's easier to visualize then. So I tried to draw it for you guys so you can see what that looks like.
That looks great. Thank you.
And then we get into blue, which represents scissor cuts. And these are it's just damage to the strings of the web. So right now we are in a pandemic and there's lots of damage to the strings of the web, lots of scissor cuts happening. Like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of students who haven't been going to school every day and they are not seeing their friends. They might be less engaged in school, not seeing their anchors. And these are all scissor cuts. So scissor cuts can be either actions or feelings of the young person or the anchor. So if a young person could be pushing people away, that could be scissor cuts, or if the anchor is possibly pushing people away, that could be scissor cuts as well. So I have some examples here, like moving schools could be it could lead to many scissor cuts for people, or abuse like physical or emotional abuse could lead to many scissor cuts. And just imagine, I'll go back to the last slide here where my drawing is. That would just look like strings being cut. So as you can see, then the balloon is going to be more likely to fall through the cracks, and that is not good. And it's important to remember that scissor cuts can be repaired. They can be mended. And it's always important to, if you get a scissor cut, it's always important to replace them.
Just to clarify, if it's your grandfather who's passed away, we wouldn't suggest replacing your grandfather, but if you can add to your web of support, find other anchors who could help weave that web back a little stronger, because that person leaving is very difficult, of course.
Yes, thank you for that, Jane. So thanks for that clarification there. And then we get into indigo, which represents caring for the carers. And this is a very important part of the web. And basically this just means that even anchors have their own webs of support and they need their own anchors and their own personal lives. So I think it's important for adults to take time for themselves and for kids to recognize this. So like my anchors, like my mom and my dad, for example, I recognize that it's important for them to have time for themselves, because their only job isn't just to be my anchor. They have other responsibilities in their lives and they have their own lives and they need their own anchors and stuff like that. So it's really important for kids to recognize this and to give their parents a break. And also that's another reason why the more anchors you have, the better, because your anchors can't always be there for you. So it's important to look to your other anchors when one anchor may not be there for you at that time that you need them.
Yeah, it really becomes one of the ways we start to realize that building a web of support is important for all of us and not just our young people.
And then the last part of the web is social norms. And we like to think of this as the wind that blows across the web that can tangle the strings and push the balloon off. And it kind of makes things a little bit more messy. And these are accepted attitudes and behaviors for the people in the community. So every community is going to have different social norms. People living within the community might view the social norms differently too. So I just have some examples of just like random non-community specific community norms. And it's important to remember that these can actually be negative or positive. So like drug use in a community where a community has like high drug use amongst teens or adults, that could be a social norm that disrupts the web. Or a community that might have really good schools, that could lead to a better web of support. It might push the balloon back onto the web. So these can be good or bad. And then I think we have an aha slide, Jane.
Yeah, we're going to try something a little bit different here. We're using a tool called Aha Slides. And what it will do is allow you to participate in the webinar. We have a question. Let's see, let me go back here. We sort of jumped ahead. I want to make sure we hit the right question. We are wanting to ask the question about naming community norms. Okay, same number for each slide. So let's give you a chance to participate in a couple of slides, which I think would be good. So what I'd love to have you do is, if you can see, hopefully, the AHA slide link in the chat, if you click on it, it will open in either on your laptop screen or even on your phone or on your tablet, and it will allow you to type in answers. And we're wanting you just to keep it short and simple. In 2 to 4 words, the first question: what are the top 3 challenges kids are facing during the pandemic? And so if you just take a second to type that in, we were trying to get the folks from the Philippines on, so my apologies for the phone going off a little bit. Doing a little troubleshooting behind the scenes there. And I will share with you our AHA slides. Okay, and you can see that already people are starting to answer. And as more people contribute their comments, you'll see that the slide moves around a little bit. And we're saving the slides, and so that'll be one of the resources that's available on our website, so you can come back and take a look and see what other people have said. Clearly, isolation is standing out as the biggest challenge. And we're also seeing disconnectedness, drug use, loneliness, losing access to anchors. And as more people answer, anxiety starts to get a little larger, so that's representing more of you would have made that comment. That's great. Thank you very much for contributing. Okay, we'll jump to our next slide. And once you've completed filling this one out, you should see again on your phone or your laptop, it'll take you to the next slide. And that question is, based on what you're seeing around you, what scissor cuts do you see happening to the youth in your life? It could be your kids, it could be neighbors, it could be nieces and nephews. Of course, Charlie, the young people around him, he's seeing a lot of them. What scissor cuts do you see happening to the youth around you? While you're doing that, I'll just pop up here. Let's go back and share. What scissor cuts do you see happening to the youth around you? Okay, interesting. Technical glitch on my end, apparently. Let me exit and go back to presenting. Anchors' webs are weaker. Boy, isn't that true? It's really affected all of us. Interactions have changed. Apparently, I'm doing something technically weird. Let's go back to okay. Let me see. I've got multiple windows here. Okay, we'll try this again. Let's see if it lets me swing back around. Okay, we've got our challenges. We've got scissor cuts. There we go. Anchors' webs are weaker. Interactions have changed. Loss of direction, loss of focus. Yep, less social interaction. Impact on school performance. That we know is happening all over the country, right? Those are great. Thank you. And I think I have it set so you can continue to answer as I go to the next slide, which is, what do you see as community norms in Hastings? It could be positive, it could be negative. Brady gave us some examples. But when you think about Hastings, particularly if you're a long-time resident, what are some of the things that are just the way we do things? No, that's just the way things are in Hastings. What kind of community norms do you see here? Community norms. Are we having, is it letting us participate? It looks like 8, oh, it might just be taking a second. It looks like 8 people so far have commented. Let's see if those start to show up. While we wait, we've got AHA slides. I'll just flip back here to a couple of the PowerPoints that we made. Why anchors, kids with healthy webs of support, do better on every measure of success, reduce risk-taking behaviors, and develop grit and resilience to face life's challenges. So one of the things I think the handbook is really handy with is in the very front. We do have quite a bit of data. The data was collected originally by Search Institute, and even though this data is a little bit older, they continue to collect data in the years since, and it very much parallels what is being noted in here. And so kids with thick webs are less likely to use drugs, alcohol. I'll be curious to see if vaping comes up on their surveys. That, you know, that's a fairly new challenge for our young people. They do better in school. They kind of hang out with a little less risky crowd, and they go on to become more successful adults. And success, we don't mean money, but we mean, you know, have a life, get up every day and go to work, have a family, contribute to their community, be able to live successfully on their own. So it's definitely clear that that anchoring is important to that. What makes a good anchor? Brady talked a little bit about it. Safe and trustworthy. They have the young person's best interests at heart. They have high expectations for young people, and they can parent, teach, coach, mentor them into those expectations. You don't need a degree. You don't need to have, you know, really professional qualifications. You just need to care about the kids and your life around you. Now, I have a couple of slides about anchoring. What I'm going to do is move through these kind of quickly, but it will be up on the website, so you'll be able to go back and look at these. Basically, you know, positive, not perfect, be present, be attentive, keep promises, give your time. That's just the biggest thing kids are looking for is our time. Do we spend time with them? When we are with them, are we present, or are we, you know, we've got issues with these things too. It's putting the phone down, it's looking them in the eye, or if driving is sometimes great, you don't have to look each other in the eye, that's sometimes better, but you're in the same space and you have time devoted to each other. And we really focus on viewing kids in full color, not black and white. Kids aren't good or bad, right? Got the good kids, the bad kids, the kids in this clique, the kids in that clique. It was the same when I was in school. I'm sure it was the same when you were in school. But we want to see kids as having full sides to them, good and bad, pluses and minuses. We don't want to see them in just one particular way. And then I've got some tips. Again, we'll have this on the website, but use their name, make eye contact, tell them what they're doing well, build on their strengths. Look around. This one, all these on the right-hand side came from our Yes Team members. Give space while still being present, I thought was great. Notice what they do well and tell them. This I thought was interesting. Don't reject someone else's reality. And I think a lot of us, when we were younger and we were upset or frustrated about something, maybe we had a parent or a grandparent or a teacher, I definitely remember a teacher saying, oh, that's not a big deal. Why are you making a big deal out of that? That's, you're being too sensitive. I know someone who heard that a lot growing up. Wasn't me, but I know them. You're just being too sensitive. That is rejecting the reality that that young person is experiencing. Look around and see who needs more anchors. Mary and I have talked about this, about, our kids are both involved in sports growing up. And oftentimes in the hustle and bustle of being, a hockey parent or a football parent or a soccer parent, you kind of don't really see that there's a kid over there whose parents don't show up on time, or maybe never has parents who come to the games. Take a look and see who that young person is, and see if you can just strike up a conversation and talk to them when you see them at practice. These are some great questions for youth that you can ask the young people in your lives. Again, it'll be on the website. But I think the biggest thing is that we want to focus on what's good. We don't want to talk to young people about what they're struggling with. Again, you have to put this in context a little bit. But when we want to help them build their webs of support, it's focusing on what's right and strong about their personality, their temperament, their talents. And then this is a list of scissor cuts. And so you can see that Brady touched on some of them. These are some things that kids do. And then these are some things that are happening to them. This is, again, prior to the pandemic. But if you have a parent or an anchor who approves of risky behavior, who lets alcohol be available for young people, I only know what house to go to. Just put your keys in the bowl by the front door. That is approving risky behavior. And it means that kids are more likely to engage in that behavior. Addiction in at least one parent, of course, abuse, but then things that kids choose to do. Being home alone 2 or more hours a day, again, prior to the pandemic, but we are going to have some real issues. People have relied on their devices so much that getting kids back in the classroom and getting them away from those could be a tad challenging. Oh, we'll come back to the Helping the Kids Succeed handbook. Let's go back and see if we were able to get folks, oh, excellent, community norms. Drug and alcohol use. I think that's probably true in a lot of communities, but I know people have said that that's a particular issue here. It is close-knit. That is a positive. People care. It's a caring community. Tight-knit is always a challenge, right? Because it means that people can be close to each other, but it can also be harder for people who are newer to the community to be able to make friends. Good schools. It's nice to see multiple people responded there positively as well. That's great. Thank you so much for helping us experiment a little bit with these. It's kind of fun to try new things. We don't want to just be talking at you the whole time. And then based on what you've heard and based on what you see around you, our next question is, in 2 to 4 words, what steps could you take as an anchor to help the young people around you strengthen their webs of support? So again, it doesn't have to be, we don't have to take everybody to Disneyland every year. Of course, that is fun. But what are other things that you think would be either things you can do, or perhaps you're thinking of something around you that somebody could do? What steps could you take as an anchor to help the young people strengthen their webs of support? As everybody's taking a minute to think about that, Charlie or Brady, do you have any comments or insights in terms of, we've talked a little bit about what students are wrestling with. Do you see some coping strategies that they've been able to devise that help them maybe deal with some of the barriers?
Yeah, I think each kid is kind of different. Each person has their own coping mechanisms, but relying on your anchors in a time like this is very important for a lot of students, and I really feel for the people who don't have as many anchors or who haven't really seen the model, and we're trying really hard to show everybody the model. I just know it's a really hard time for a lot of people, and a lot of people are struggling with finding coping mechanisms now.
Right. Charlie, how about you? What are you noticing as kids are now getting back into the classroom, getting back to school?
Yeah, one thing that came to mind when Brady were talking about coping mechanisms that I realized when I've been talking to some kids, I've been impressed with some kids, their resourcefulness, finding coping mechanisms. There was a girl I was talking to who was telling me about a strategy she uses, and it was a song that she found on the internet about just breathing. It wasn't like a popular song. It was just something she came across, and it was really cool. So I asked her if I could share it with other kids that I work with. And so kids' resourcefulness has really impressed me always, but some cool examples more recently.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and as far as kids being back, really most kids are just really excited to be back and happy to be, you know, around their friends again, even though it's different. So I've wondered, you know, if kids will have a new sense of appreciation about school. You know, it used to be something a lot of kids, you know, didn't like, and, you know, sometimes, you know, absence makes the heart go fonder or something, you know.
That's true.
Kids might appreciate school a little bit more.
You know, I think that is a great point, and I've read this a couple of other places. When you talk about kids, both of you have talked about kids being able to cope and being resilient, and I think that is something that we really want to honor and recognize. No generation prior. I mean, you have to go back to 1918 to find kind of a similar large-scale event. And of course, that was a very different time, and even different school situations. And so our young people have really had to develop a set of skills that it will be challenging, but it will also be positive for them in the long run. And it's important for us to recognize that and to celebrate that with them, and to acknowledge that it wasn't easy and you're dealing with it, you're coming through it. Of course, not making light when we struggle, but to recognize that and to see the positive and to see the strengths in them. I do think that'd be great. And just some fantastic suggestions. Yeah, reach out. Say the littlest thing of saying hello can make such a big difference. Positive encouragement, kindness. I think partly for us as adults, it's remembering how important it is, how much we wanted this as a young person. And even today, how we crave connection and being in touch with people. And so we will also share these. I'll feed this back to everybody. And hopefully those are some good suggestions that you can take into account. Fantastic. And thank you so much for being willing to give that a little bit of a try. It's a little bit different. Okay, we want to open it up to questions that you might have. As you think about that, let me go ahead here. I'm kind of scrolling down. I wanted to give you some information about getting a copy of the Helping Kids Succeed handbook. And so basically, you could certainly stop by our office. We're open 8 to 4, Monday through Friday. We're small. Today we're working from home. So, you know, you could call if you wanted to check and make sure that we were there. Or you could order one. Our new website is mobile responsive, which is great. So you could do this on your phone. But basically, and again, I'll put this in resources. You'd visit our unitedwayofhastings.org page and click the donate button. There's a second donate button. Choose one-time donation. Just $5. That will cover the packaging and the shipping. That's just it. Then add dedication. Choose on behalf of and write Helping Kids Succeed handbook. Enter your full name and mailing address on contact information. And then when you enter your payment information, we never see that. And so I think that's important for people to realize. And I'll just click over here. I had that all pulled up. That's our resource page. Basically, click donate. It's going to take you to a new donation page. We use GiveMN for secure donations. You'll choose a one-time donation. You'll enter $5. The hide from public display, totally up to you, but you'll want to click and add a dedication. Dedicated to on behalf of. Just type in Helping HKS handbook. Please, in this field, enter your contact information and your mailing address. Sue Smith, 345 2nd Street, Hastings, MN 55033. Because we'll see this piece, but we won't see your mailing address. So we don't see any of this information. So you'll just enter your credit card information. Down here, if you are so inclined to cover the cost, that would be great, that 34 cents. And then you just click the blue pay button. We'll get those all packaged up and we'll get those sent out to you. Okay, question. Thank you, Erin, for being here. Thank you, Morris. Appreciate it. I know Morris is going to be on one or more of the webinars coming up. What other questions do people have? We'll do a stop share here. And you can unmute your microphone if you'd like to just ask a question by voice versus typing in. Totally up to you.
Jane and Brady, what do you think is just one takeaway that our participants can think about as they leave the webinar and can put in place right away? Something easy, something, a takeaway from today's messages that, is something that, okay, I'm going to go back to life now after this webinar, and what can I do to make a difference?
I'll let Brady go.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan. Well, I know a lot of people in this presentation here are probably old enough to be anchors. So I think a big thing for what anchors can do are just like simple check-ins, like, hey, like, how are you doing today? Like, I love it when my friends like send me a text like that, or like my parents send me a text like that. I think that's super awesome. So just really like the little things like that are huge and they make a huge difference. And I think that is probably like the biggest takeaway for how to be an anchor.
Great.
I typed simple check-ins into the chat. How do you feel about the technology that people have been using so heavily the last few months? Almost a year now, actually.
It's getting better. Like, this is actually my first Zoom presentation that I'm doing, so like I was a little nervous about that, but
You did great.
I'm so much more like comfortable with the technology now, and I think that's like really good for a lot of young people, also like adults, because like this is the future.
Yeah, definitely. Erin has a really good question in the chat. How do you think technology has been a help and a challenge with COVID? For example, connecting with friends online, but also cyberbullying. Kids have learned so much about technology and utilizing resources, but there are also challenges with the lack of human connection.
I think there are a lot of negatives with social media, but in a time like this, I think it has really helped a lot of people. Like apps like Instagram, people I know, a lot of people I follow, share mental health resources online on their Instagram stories and stuff like that.
Interesting.
And I know like apps like TikTok, there's a lot people can see that other people are going through similar things that they are. A lot of people like are very open on the app about things that they're struggling with. And that app never fails to put a smile on my face. So I think it really helps a lot of people with that as well. So social media, I think, has been huge for a lot of young people.
Interesting. I just put a link in the chat to a Facebook group I've been a part of for a little while now called Parenting in a Tech World. They have over 100,000 members. Oh my gosh, no wonder there's multiple posts every day. And it's a Facebook group where parents are trying to figure out what is the appropriate amount of technology and how do I best monitor that? And what age is the right age for Snapchat or TikTok? And so there's a lot of information, but if parents are concerned or want some ideas, some advice, that is a really good group to be a part of. I'm gonna look up a different one here. Charlie, what's been your impression?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of benefit. I mean, being able to stay connected with their friends. They're not necessarily, there are some kids who aren't going to like call up a friend and talk to them on the phone necessarily. So, staying connected with their video games, or I think it's easier for kids to FaceTime than it is to talk on the phone sometimes. And
yeah,
I've seen situations where my boys that are 10 and 11, they set the FaceTime up while they're eating lunch, and they actually have like a conversation with their friends, whereas if they were in person, they wouldn't have like a verbal dialogue typically. They'd be playing. And so it was interesting hearing them have like an actual verbal dialogue. It was cool.
That is very cool, because I've heard some kids really they're doing so much texting and social media that the verbal is really kind of getting lost.
Mhm.
Wow, very interesting. It will be, again, like anything, right? Like any tool, pluses and minuses, two-edged swords. I put another group in the chat, a link to a Facebook group called Mental Health Navigators, Parents Helping Parents. And this is a group, I know the woman who runs it. We've chatted a couple of times, Robin Livingston. She's from Minnetonka, actually. And even though this group has grown, I think she has about 10,000 members or so. 1.8. So I'm off on both, sorry. But there are really spirited conversations there as well. And so if you're looking for some support as a parent or someone who wants to build webs, that is a really good group, very positive. And Robin does a good job. Sometimes people will contact her and want to ask a question anonymously. And so she's been able to share those with the group. And so those are two resources that I recommend from a social media standpoint. That would be helpful. Other questions that folks have about building webs. You know, we have been doing this since, late in 2012. And again, thanks to the middle school, we've reached, Brady has said, in the high school, the senior class is the only one, just because of a fluke of scheduling, is the only one that hasn't received a Helping Kids Succeed presentation at some point in the last couple of years. And we're brainstorming on how to possibly address that. It has been really surprising how much kids have retained. We surveyed them, I think 2 years ago, and found there was about a 75% retention rate. And that was with very little coaching, actually. What color? 5 letters, we hold up our hand. Yeah. And I had an experience of being at the high school for a mental health presentation 2 years ago, I think. And the kids it was 8th graders going into 9th grade. Oh, Brady and I were there. We were doing the 9th grade orientation and asking kids to explaining who we were, United Way of Hastings, Helping Kids Succeed. And it would be, the look on kids' faces was so fun because it was like, well, I've heard of you guys. What? Oh yeah, you did a presentation at my school. And again, we prompted them a little bit, and they're like, yeah, you need these. You need like anchors. You need like 5, right? Like 5 anchors. Yes, you do. And I'd love to see the parents. They're like, what? You didn't talk about. I don't know about that. Yeah, it's really cool. You need like 5 anchors. So the fact that they're remembering the information, I thought was A, delightful, very happy for them, and B, shows you how profound the information really is. And kids do connect to it, and the model is easy for them to grasp, and the language is very youth appropriate as well as adult appropriate. And so I think that's, kids recognize that it's important. It's important that they have these anchors.
And I think so valuable too that the presentations are done by high school kids. I mean, kids, they're used to hearing from adults, but when they hear from a high school student, it really sinks in a lot more. So that's been really cool.
Yeah, great point. And that is absolutely why we wanted to do that.
That's
why
I love teaching like the 8th or 9th graders, because like they see somebody older, like an older peer come in, and they're just like so much more engaged.
Mm-hmm. It's really true. And I'm going to, as my daughter would say, I'm going to pump Brady's tires a little bit, because in 2019, that was the last time we were able to do the 8th grade. We typically teach the week before Thanksgiving, which is the week where half of the kids are off to Eagle Bluff for 2 days. They switch on Wednesday, and then the other half go off on Thursday, Friday. And so we get kids that are not in the same classroom with their typical, the kids that they know. Often they've mixed kids up a little bit. And they're either crazy excited because they're going in 2 days, or they're completely exhausted because they got back home and fell asleep. And the group that we did in 2019, Brady and Isaac Fritz was he was our other presenter. They make a great team presenting together. And they had not only was every class full, the last class of the day, we counted, Brady was at 42 kids that were in that class.
Yeah, it was like over 40 kids.
Yeah.
Wild.
And they were sitting on the floor. They were sitting on tables. They didn't have enough chairs. It was crazy. And to watch Brady and Isaac all day long, and including that class of 42, manage the class, give the presentation, handle the disruptions. Both of them were great about kind of looking at the kid and using eye contact. It was fantastic. And so it's just been delightful to see these students develop their presentation and teaching skills. And I have no doubt that some of them will go on to be teachers as well. So our time is running down. We want to make sure that we honor our time commitment to all of you. Now, Brady and Charlie have agreed to stay on for a couple of extra minutes. So if someone has a question that they didn't get a chance to ask, we'll leave the Zoom call open here, and you're welcome to stay on for a couple of minutes if you have anything you'd like to ask. We do again want to thank our sponsors, Allina Health and Tom Lutz and Associates Counseling. Really appreciate them helping to defray our expenses. And then also want to encourage you to register for the remaining webinars in the series. Please fill out the evaluation when we send that to you. And we have light bulbs down at our office, thanks to Excel Energy and Green Light. They dropped off a pallet of lovely 60-watt LED low energy use light bulbs, which are very bright and work very well. Please feel free to come by and pick up a pack, and think of a donation if you thought that the webinar was helpful. We, of course, would always appreciate that. Thank you so much for being with us. We hope to see you in the webinars during the rest of the week. And if not, have a great week and build your webs of support.